Hello everyone, my name is Rob and I'm a postdoctoral researcher based in Vienna, Austria. Step counting is one of the oldest features included in wearables, and in this video I'll test the step counting accuracy of the Withings Scanwatch. I tested two main attributes. First of all, does it count steps when it's supposed to count steps, and are these the right amount? And second of all, does it count any steps when it's not supposed to count steps, or are there any false steps? I do this because in another video I showed that this was a major problem for some other smart trackers like the Fitbit Charge 2 and Charge 3. I was part of the early release program of the Scanwatch, so I've had some time to test it. As always, I don't want to waste your time, so timestamps are in the description below and also on the timeline. To test if the Scanwatch counted the correct number of steps, I did several small experiments yesterday. I went out and took exactly 15,000 steps, and I counted those using this small tally counter. So each time I took a step, I would count +1 on the tally counter. In total, this took me about 3.5 hours of walking, and I divided these 15,000 steps into 3 smaller sub-experiments. In the first experiment, I took exactly 10,000 steps, and I walked normally while wearing the Scanwatch. For the second experiment, I walked 4,000 steps, but for this experiment I recruited a friend of mine to see if she would get the same results as I did. So I gave her the Scanwatch and we walked together while she counted to 4,000 steps. And finally, I did an experiment where for 1,000 steps I put my arm against my chest and tried not to swing it at all, because in the comments of my videos and on Reddit, people had mentioned that their Withings devices did not give them enough steps. They had contacted Withings and Withings told them you might need to swing your arm more while walking, which is kind of a weird thing to say, but I anyway wanted to see if this would have any effect on the number of steps I would get. I divided the first experiment of 10,000 steps into 4 parts of 2,400 steps each. And I did that because I wanted to vary 2 different things. First of all, I wanted to change on which arm I wear my Scanwatch. I normally wear it on my right arm, which is my dominant arm, but it might have an influence on the way I swing my arm, so I wanted to change between that. Second, I switched the hand in which I was holding the tally counter, because each time I took a step, I set +1 on the tally counter, but of course I'm doing this while holding the device in one of my hands. And this might also influence the way in which I swing my arm. So in total that gives me 4 combinations of the arm on which I'm wearing my Scanwatch and the hand in which I'm holding the tally counter. As I mentioned, I took 2,500 steps in 4 different combinations of wearing the Scanwatch on the right or left wrist and having the tally counter in my right or left hand, making a total of 10,000 steps. So let's look at the results. So here you see all the combinations of where the Scanwatch and the tally counter were, and ideally all of these would be exactly 2,500. But as you can see, most of them overcounted by about 40 steps, a little bit under, a little bit over 40 steps. However, overall this is just a small but consistent overcounting, and it doesn't really matter on which arm I wear the Scanwatch and in which hand I held the tally counter. So in total, I wanted to take 10,000 steps, but I got 10,149 steps. So I would say this is pretty good. For the second experiment, I divided the 4,000 steps my friend took into 4 parts of 1,000 steps each. And again, I varied the arm on which she wore the Scanwatch and the hand in which she held the tally counter. So the second experiment is very similar to the first experiment, also all combinations of right or left Scanwatch and right or left tally counter, but now only taking 1,000 steps. So let's have a look at the results. Now, ideally, all of these would have 1,000 steps in them, but as you can see, it's pretty close. When my friend wore the Scanwatch on her right wrist, she got a slight undercounting, and when it was worn on her left wrist, she got a slight overcounting. If you look at the total of 4,000 steps that she took, the Scanwatch actually counted 4,002. Based on these experiments, I would say that the Scanwatch is doing pretty well, because both for me and for my friend, the total was pretty close, though there might be a slight overcounting sometimes and even a slight undercounting. Overall, it's doing pretty well. Finally, does it matter if I swing my arm whilst walking? To test that, I held my arm firm against my chest and took 1,000 steps. So for the final 1000 steps, I held my arm against my chest like this, and the correct amount should be 1000 steps, and the Scanwatch actually counted exactly 1000 steps as well. Though this is a very small experiment, so I cannot say if it's any better than the previous results, but it's at least not any worse. So not swinging your arm does not appear to have any major effect on the step counting accuracy of the Scanwatch, or at least it doesn't for me. So now we know that the Scanwatch is pretty good at counting steps when it's supposed to count steps. But does it count any steps when it's not supposed to count steps? Or does it overcount somehow? If I get any of these fake steps, that must be due to arm movements that are not related to walking. So therefore I analyzed the number of steps per minute I got for different activities and different modes of transport. For things like riding on my stationary bike, cycling and riding in a car, you would ideally get 0 steps per minute because, well, you're not stepping. However, in a previous video I made about the Fitbit Charge 2 and Charge 3, I showed that this was actually a major issue for some activities. And I would get the same and sometimes even more steps per minute than I would get while walking. So what I've plotted here on the horizontal axis is the number of steps per minute, and on the vertical axis the activity that I did. So walking, cycling, weightlifting and indoor cycling, and each dot is a single time that I did this activity, and I calculated the average steps per minute for that session. So as you can see, I get by far the most steps per minute by walking. So again, each dot here is a single time walking, so a single session of walking. And this would indeed count as sort of a normal pace of walking, and anywhere above 100 might even be considered vigorous walking. And you can see that during cycling I do get some steps per minute, so anywhere between 10 and let's say 35, 37. Though it's still okay because of course your arm is moving a lot while cycling as well. You get a lot of bumps in the city. And if you compare it to indoor cycling, when you're not moving but you're just stationary, you don't get a lot of steps per minute, which is encouraging because when I was using the Fitbit Charge 2 and Charge 3, even though I told them that I was doing indoor cycling, I would still get about the same amount of steps per minute as I would get walking. So it's encouraging that the Scanwatch does not do this. So for weightlifting I get a few more steps per minute, though not a lot, but this also makes maybe some sense because I'm moving my arms more. So these were either activities that I told the Scanwatch that I was doing, so like indoor cycling or weightlifting, I would activate it on the watch as an activity, or the Scanwatch would detect it automatically like cycling or walking. And to make sure that these results are not biased, I also used another app to track when I was cycling or walking, and I compared also these results with the steps of the Scanwatch. And these are the results you see here. So again, you see that most of the walking is between 75 and 100, 110 steps per minute. Cycling is around 25, 20 steps per minute, so these are still the same. Interestingly, skateboarding, which I only did twice in this period, is somewhere in between. So it's in between walking and cycling, which makes sense because just the movement is somewhere in between. And I was in the tram and in the car only once, but you can see in the car I got almost no steps. In the tram I might have gotten some steps, but I also had to walk to the tram and away from the tram. So maybe there was some overlap. But overall, I would say that the Scanwatch is doing pretty well. As a data scientist, a huge part of my life is spent in front of the computer. And I want to make sure I don't get any fake steps from moving my arm while using the mouse and the keyboard. So while I'm editing this video, I will take 1 hour where I'm not allowed to move from my seat, so I cannot take any steps. And I will count the number of steps I got according to the Scanwatch. Hi, Rob from the future here. So during the first hour of editing, the Scanwatch only counted 6 steps. So it did really well, and it does not count a lot of steps when you're working on the computer. So, to summarize, the Scanwatch appears to be pretty good at counting steps. It gets about the right amount of steps when you're walking, and it doesn't get a lot of fake steps when you're not walking. Interestingly, not swinging my arm while walking, but instead holding it firm against my chest, did not have a significant influence on the step counter accuracy of the Scanwatch. Instead, it might have even made it more accurate, though I do not have enough data to definitively show this. I should mention some limitations of my test. First of all, I just tested the Scanwatch on 2 different people. So it might be if you swing your arm very differently than me or my friend does, that you get very different results. Second, I only tested for false steps for a limited number of activities. So maybe if you do other activities like ironing or maybe swimming, you get more false steps than I actually did for cycling or for being on my home trainer. Finally, I'm not a runner, so I did not test the Scanwatch while running. So I'm not sure if the number of steps you get while running is correct or not. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the step counting accuracy of the Scanwatch. It does much better than the Fitbit Charge 2 and the Fitbit Charge 3 that I tested in the past. In my videos, I do scientific tests on different devices like the Oura Ring, the Fitbit, and the Scanwatch. And in the end, I hope to use tracking to improve my life. So if you like that subject and like this video, consider subscribing to my channel. And also consider giving it a thumbs up because it makes it easier for other people to find my videos. Currently, I'm actually working on a step analysis of the Fitbit Charge 4 to see if it's any better. So stay tuned for that. Do you have any experience with the step counting accuracy of different Withings watches? Well, let us know in the comments below. For now, thank you for watching and see you in the next video.